Nathan Pacheco has been performing for about a decade. He's toured alongside the Tabernacle Choir, David Archuleta, Yanni, and he also has an annual PBS special that you may have seen him on over the years. We're pleased to be talking to him ahead of his upcoming concert in Pocatello on Friday night. Nathan, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure to be on this, and I cannot wait to come back to Pocatello. I tell everyone that I'm talking to about this concert that the Stevens Performing Arts Center is one of the most beautiful venues I've performed in. So you guys have a real gem there in Pocatello.
Stevens Performing Arts Center it's a fun little venue.
Yeah, it is.
I'm kind of coming into this interview a little bit emotional. I just listened to your song you did about a year ago on your latest album, Here's to You. And you did a song on there called Slow Down.
Yeah.
And sounds like that's a song that's a bit of a tribute to mothers and motherhood,
the
impact that they have on a child growing up. But then there's kind of a twist at the end where the mom is kind of on her last days.
Right.
It's like the son is paying tribute to his mom.
Right.
Anyway, anyone who's a parent, it's a moving song. So anyway, I that's the first time I'd heard that song. And so I guess my first point I just wanted to make is thank you for your music. That was
thank you for that.
Really moving.
I'm assuming you have kids?
I do, yes.
Same. So we got three kiddos over here, and so our oldest was born 2 weeks ago, and now he just turned 10, and I don't know how that's possible. And the other two are growing up so fast, and so that song, you hit the nail on the head. It was actually on an EP for Mother's Day a couple of years ago, and it was an EP specifically to pay tribute to mothers. And one thing that my wife Katie and I have recognized as we've been raising kids is that there are crazy days where we're just like, oh my gosh, when are we going to get through this? When is this ever going to end? And then, in the same breath, we're like, oh wait, this is like amazing, even though it's testing our patience to the limits at times. And even though, it has so many challenges being a parent, at the same time, it's the most fulfilling and most beautiful thing in life that I've experienced so far.
Being a parent's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your show on Friday. I assume it's a Christmas concert?
It is. However, it will not be of just Christmas songs. It's probably going to be half and half. So there'll be, about half Christmas songs that we are all familiar with and love. And then there'll be some religious songs that I think will fit perfectly into the Christmas set. And then, I sing in this, classical crossover style. I've been inspired by Andrea Bocelli, Josh Groban. And so, there'll be a few classics that I just love singing that I'm going to put into the concert as well.
That's great. So again, that's the Stevens Performing Arts Center this Friday at 7:30. And I think we were going to try and give some tickets away. I still have to discuss how we were going to handle that. But anyway,
awesome.
We'll have some more information here a little bit later. For people who don't know who you are, Nathan, do you want to just maybe kind of explain some of what your music is, what it's like, and some of your popular hits perhaps over the years?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the DC area in Northern Virginia, and I was raised in a musical home. And I started taking classical voice lessons in high school. And it was around that time that Andrea Bocelli kind of launched his career in the States, and he sang Time to Say Goodbye with Sara Brightman on his PBS special. And I was absolutely spellbound when I heard him do that performance. I loved the way that he blended kind of the strength of classical music with the accessibility of pop music. And so that's kind of been an inspiration for me over the years. Instead of doing strictly classical music, even though there are certain songs that are more on the classical side, I try to, do this classical crossover style because I feel it's more accessible. I connect more with it, and I feel that people in general connect more with it. And so, that's been my focus for the past 15 years or so. I started out with Yanni, that Greek piano player and composer. I worked with him for about 3 years, and then signed with Disney for my solo album. And then about 10 years ago until now, I've just been an independent artist where I've been continuing to write music and record. Let's see. Some of the people, a lot of people know me from my collaboration with David Archuleta. I recorded the prayer with him about 7 years ago, and like you mentioned earlier, I've toured with him and performed quite a bit with him. And so a lot of people know me from that collaboration. I've also done a lot of recordings with Deseret Book over the past few years, where I've kind of done more sacred songs or religious album, and songs like Forever or Be Thou My Vision. Songs like that were on the Higher album that I released with them a few years ago. And so, yeah, that's kind of my career in a nutshell. And every Christmas season, I love going around and performing and kind of doing these hybrid shows where I'll do Christmas music and also some kind of non-Christmas songs as well, just to put together a fun show, a show that's definitely appropriate for families, and, so people can bring their kids and everything.
Yeah, that's great. I'm always amazed by people, because you have quite a vocal range. I don't know how you would describe yourself. Would you describe yourself as an opera singer, or is it somewhere in between?
I would definitely, I guess it depends on the song that I'm singing. But yes, I am an opera singer. I was trained classically, and I continue to study classically with a teacher in Manhattan. But I will depart from the classical training on certain songs, just because some songs just need to be sung differently, in my opinion. If they're sung in the more operatic way, you'll sound like a pompous pig. And so I try to adapt my style of singing to the style of music that I'm doing.
That's great. Yeah, that opera, I'm always amazed when I listen to people who have that ability, because these people have pipes, and it takes some skill to be able to sing like that.
That's intense.
But you talked about, at a young age, you were listening to Andrea
Bocelli.
Bocelli. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Bocelli.
How did you get interested in that style of music?
Well, it started with me just being raised in a home where my mom taught classical piano. And so I had to take lessons when I was a kid, and then I got into classical violin, played that for a few years. And then my sister was studying opera with Michael Ballum at Utah State when I was a kid. I guess I was in an intermediate school at the time. And so I was exposed to that style of singing. And so I started just dabbling in that style of singing by taking voice lessons on and off in high school. And even though it may sound like I'm joking, I'm not. I literally sounded like Kermit the Frog for a few years while I was learning that operatic style, because, you hear people like Pavarotti and it sounds like such a built and strong sound. And so when you try to imitate that, the way you hear yourself while you're singing isn't the same as, say, someone else is hearing you. But it's hard to learn that lesson. And it was, it took a few years before I learned to stop, kind of grabbing the throat, tightening up all these muscles that cause you to sound like Kermit. And little by little, you start learning the way to support properly and sing in such a way to where you can still get that built sound, but it's in a natural, it sounds natural as opposed to artificial and manipulated. And so it's been a process. And quite frankly, I'll still have lessons with my teacher and have to be reminded of some of the lessons that she started teaching me 15 years ago. That's kind of just the nature of any kind of learning, in my opinion, but especially when it comes to a classical style of singing, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. How did your friendship with Yanni come about? How did you two get introduced?
So that was definitely a little miracle that happened. So you got time for a little story of how I got started in the music biz?
Yeah.
So I was finishing up at BYU, and I heard Elder Jeffrey Holland give a talk at BYU where he said, God is anxiously waiting for the chance to answer your prayers and fulfill your dreams, just as he always has, but he can't if you don't dream, and he can't if you don't pray. In short, he can't if you don't believe. And so that was kind of a turning point for me. I was even debating whether I should do another career instead of music, but I had a love for music and a desire to kind of do what Andrea Bocelli was doing at the time and is still doing. And so, I was dreaming and I was praying and I was working towards helping those prayers be answered. And I did a few auditions, and one of those auditions led to another audition that allowed me to get in front of someone who was actually collaborating with Yanni at the time, and who was suggesting to Yanni that he should do a project with singers, since, he's an instrumental artist. And so this Rick Wake was the producer that I sang for, and he set up the audition for me to sing for Yanni. He told me to write lyrics to one of Yanni's songs. And so I did. And I went down and I performed for Yanni, and thankfully the audition went well. And so that's kind of how my collaboration and friendship with Yanni started, where, we did about a 3-year collaboration where I worked with him in the studio, wrote music with him, recorded, and then hit the road and performed all throughout the States, Canada, and Mexico. And that in and of itself was an amazing experience, especially for someone just starting out in the music biz. But then from that, a lot of other doors opened up, such as the doors with Disney that allowed me to start with them as a solo artist. And so I was very fortunate to have those experiences.
Yeah, wow. Wow. And I love the leap of faith aspect. So many people in their lives have dreams.
Sure.
The world hits them and says, well, you need to find a backup so that you can have a sure paycheck,
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm curious, there may be people who watch this video who also have some unrealized dreams, things that they want to do, but they are in that place in their life where they're doing something that isn't their dream because it pays the bills.
Yeah.
For those people who have this passion that hasn't been met yet, do you have any words of advice or counsel for people like that?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that chasing after your dreams isn't a one-time process. I mean, I gave you the abridged version of my career, but it's been a process, and there have been a lot of ups and downs. And so someone listening to my story may think, he just had things fall into his lap overnight, great. He got lucky. And I did get lucky, and I was definitely blessed, but it didn't happen overnight. And quite frankly, like I said, there have been a lot of ups and downs over the past 15 years. And quite frankly, there have been a lot of times in my career since the Yanni and Disney experiences where I could have easily thrown in the towel and been like, yeah, this is way too hard. This is not going to work. But so I would say to anyone who is considering whether or not to chase after their dreams, I would say that it's definitely worth it, and that it's worth the payoff. And there's so much fulfillment as you work towards something that's challenging to achieve. But I would also say, don't throw in the towel if things don't happen overnight, or even if you have to make several different pivots along the way in order to get things to happen. I've had to do that in my career. And quite frankly, I think of that quote by Elder Holland still to this day, because what I've learned is that just because the Lord answered my prayers, 15 years ago, that doesn't mean that I'm set for life and that my dreams are all going to fall in place, forever and ever. It's a continual process where I have to continue to dream, continue to work towards those dreams, and continue to take several leaps of faith. And there are a lot of failures that I've had, a lot of poor decisions that I've made, business choices, that is, while I've, been learning as I go. And so it really is just a learning process. It's inevitable that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that could be seen as failures. But again, it's part of the learning process. We just pick ourselves back up, keep on going. And, like you said, there's nothing wrong with having a backup plan. Like, for example, 3 years ago-ish, when COVID hit, the music business pretty much shut down, and most artists and musicians' careers were on life support. And it was hard and it was challenging. And I almost completely threw in the towel then as well, and been like, yeah, there's no way. But I didn't feel like it was time for me to throw in the towel. And I guess there's a stubborn nature to me where I'm like, where as much as I want to throw in the towel and do something that's easier, I I sorry, I'm gonna get a little emotional, but I I feel like this is what I'm meant to do right now. And I'm grateful for the fulfillment that comes through music. It helps shorten the gap between me and heaven many times. It helps carry me through challenges and trials. And I love connecting with people in live shows to feel that the people to people connection that music can help facilitate. That's a beautiful thing. I think that connecting with other people is pretty much one of the purposes of life. And I love how music has helped me be able to connect with other people in that way.
That's great. That's beautiful. Um, you were talking about along the way in your journey, you've learned many lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So the question that came into my mind, and maybe this is a hard question to answer, what's the greatest lesson you've learned as you've gone through your career?
That's a hard one for me to focus in on because I guess I would sum it up with a few lessons. One, consistency. If you want to be good at something, if you want to reach your dreams, you just got to be consistent. That which you do on a consistent basis, you're going to become good at it eventually, even if it takes a lifetime. And you're eventually going to be successful if you are consistent. And so that kind of consistency, that persistence, I've learned that that is absolutely key. I've learned that the grass is not greener on the other side. In fact, that there is no grass on the other side. You have to plant it. I remember when I heard Elder Holland's talk, I thought, once I'm out there performing, life is just going to be perfect. There'll be no challenges whatsoever. I quickly learned that that was not the case. Even while I was, in an ideal scenario where I had the backing of, say, Yanni and Disney, and I mean, it was literally a dream come true for an artist. There were still challenges, and there are still challenges today. And then I've also learned that perfectionism is the antithesis of true growth and progress and happiness. Or in other words, that to be a perfectionist, to beat ourselves up, it just gets in the way of career success, of overall happiness, of healthy relationships and everything. I know that that may not be specifically dialed into my music career, but it plays a part. Like, for example, when I started training with this teacher in Manhattan, the main thing that she tried to help me with was, she said, basically, she was trying to get me to stop. I told you I sounded like Kermit at the beginning of my career. I was tightening up all these throat muscles and tongue muscles. And the result was I could not hit high notes. It was like I was strangling my voice. And so she would help me with that over and over again in voice lessons. And I just remember driving in my car one day and I was just kind of thinking about everything that I was learning. And it was one of those kind of aha moments where things just kind of clicked, a light bulb went on, and where it's almost as if it just made sense to me how I could apply to my singing what she was trying to teach me. But I also feel like I learned something important about me. And I even feel like, the Lord was trying to get through to me and teach me something. And if I were to try to put those feelings into words, it would be as if the Lord were saying, Nathan, just as you haven't been able to hit high notes because of how you're strangling your voice by trying to muscle your way to the high notes, the biggest threat to your happiness in life is how hard you are on yourself. It's as if you're strangling who you really are. Mm. So I've always been a perfectionist for one reason or another, and that's been a hard emotional habit to break. And to this day, it's something that I still am in the process of learning, just as I'm still in the process of trying to apply some of these lessons that my voice teacher's been trying to teach me all these years. But as I look at my life and as I look at other people that I come in contact with, I think that we're too hard on ourselves. And I think that cripples faith and also our inner spirits to chase after our dreams, and because it literally wounds our spirits, in my opinion, and saps us of strength. And so those are the three lessons. If I would sum it up: consistency or persistence, the grass is not greener, and perfectionism, no bueno. We can all do without it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's great. So, you've made it to this point in your career. You're living the dream right now.
I am.
But, as you have talked about, it's an ongoing journey.
Sure.
You started initially with, you were attracted to Andrea Bocelli.
Yeah.
Watching him as a kid. Have you since had a chance ever to meet him?
I've never met him. I have seen him perform, but I've never had the chance to actually meet him.
What's on your bucket list now? What's the next thing in your career that you hope to accomplish?
Well, I would love to meet Andrea Bocelli. I'd love to collaborate with him. That would be amazing. I've actually always wanted to collaborate with Eminem. I know that sounds so crazy, but I think he is so talented. And I don't know if you remember the duet that he did with Rihanna probably about 10 years ago, where, he does the verse where it's just like, him doing his epic verse, and then Rihanna comes in with this soaring chorus. I've always thought that would be so cool to do with kind of this classical crossover style where he's doing the verse, and then, I come in and do the kind of this triumphant chorus singing kind of this operatic style. I think that would be epic. At least in my mind, it seems epic. So who knows if that could ever happen. But, my dream is to continue to write and record music, continue to travel around the world and connect with people through music. And yeah, and for me personally, it's all about family and being true to them, and also be just trying to be true to those things that I believe in.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's always interesting to me. It's funny that you say you'd love to team up with Eminem. It seems like in today's world, anything's possible musically.
Right.
Kind of reinventing genres, and two completely different artists collaborate all the time. And
yeah.
So it's interesting.
You never know.
So with you coming to Pocatello, you mentioned you've been here before.
I have.
Last year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any ties to Eastern Idaho or Pocatello, or?
I don't actually. I don't have any family there other than my father-in-law lives not in Pocatello, but he does live in Rigby, which is not too far from there. But I don't have any specific ties to Pocatello.
Okay, got it. So, what has been your favorite song or collaboration or performance as you look back on your 10 plus years of touring and performing? Do you have a favorite thing that stands out in your mind?
Well, definitely a highlight has been doing the prayer with David Archuleta. I've loved that. And then singing at the conference center is hard to beat. I've had the chance to sing there back when President Monson was prophet. And also I sang there for President Nelson's 95th birthday and sang the prayer with Donny Osmond, which was a lot of fun, and sang Nessun Dorma on my own to 20,000+ people. And that was an electrifying experience. So those have been incredible. Also, I love England. I had the chance to do a fair amount of performing there a few years back, and I still remember performing with Katherine Jenkins. She's a mezzo-soprano that's from over there, and I still remember being her guest artist at Royal Albert Hall in London at one of her Christmas shows, and it was so unforgettable. I mean, not only was it a sold-out audience, but there was about 100-piece symphony, a 300-person choir, and then a children's choir. And then the Welsh Guard came in with their, brass instruments. And over there, it's customary for the audience to just get up and start singing Christmas carols along with you. And so there was a portion of the concert where the entire sold out crowd stood up and just started singing with their beautiful voices these Christmas carols that we all know and love. And then on top of that, you had the orchestra playing, the choir behind you singing, and then I was singing there with Catherine, and so it was just like this epic experience where we were surrounded by the most, like, given this huge bear hug of sound, and it was an unbelievable experience. I hope to be able to do that again one day.
That's cool. I remember a few years ago, I was going through a pretty rough time, and I came across a song that a performance you were featured in. It was Paul Cardall, and the song was One by One.
Yeah.
You performed with, it looks like a children's choir or something like that.
Yeah.
That song has meant so much to me in the last 5-6 years. It's really, whenever I'm having a bad day or feeling discouraged about life, I go back to that song, and it's a boost for me.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing that.
Yeah. So anyway,
and you reminded me of another really, really fulfilling collaboration. And, that was a hard song to sing, and that I had to stop several times during the recording and start over again, because I would start crying as kind of the message of the song would kind of sink deep into my heart. And that's one of the things that I love about singing, is it helps me internalize certain things. And so when it comes to songs like that, One by One, where it's talking about how personally aware the Lord is of each one of us, as I was singing, the lyrics just kind of sank in, and I started crying, and I had to stop and start over again.
It does that.
Yeah.
I still tear up every time I listen to it. But
oh, that's awesome.
Nathan, I appreciate your time.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for this.
Talking to me. As far as your performance on Friday, any comment you want to make just about what people can expect when they come?
Well, I promise a great show. Like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be about half and half, as far as, Christmas songs, and then just kind of, religious songs, like the song Forever from my Higher album. I believe it will help get people into the Christmas spirit, and also just some of those good classical crossover songs that kind of bring out more the operatic style that I do. I'll be doing a few of those. It's going to be a fun show. I think it will tug on some people's heartstrings, at least some of the songs, and then other songs will just get people, laughing and dancing and having fun.
That's great. So again, Stevens Performing Arts Center,
yes.
Friday, December 9th at 7:30. Nathan, thanks so much. Anything else you want to say to people before I let you go?
I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, a happy holiday season. I hope you can make it to the show. If not, then I'll still sing to you through social media as much as I can. But I love singing for you guys, so I hope you can make it to the show.